Whenever I'm talking to entrepreneurs that are looking to start an EV charging business, I always get a little bit nervous when we get to the part of talking about the software because I always hear my clients get a little bit discouraged after I tell them everything that's involved. But the great news is today, I think I figured out a better way around this. And this is what I want to share with you. After hearing this information, hopefully it will lead you down an easier and smoother path to starting an EV charging business. So when you're starting an EV charging business, the hardest part is what you don't see. Everyone sees the charger just sitting on the wall and they think that would be a great business to start. How complicated could it be, right? But the hardest part is the software. The hardware, the chargers are kind of like the bones, and the software or the network is like the brains. And the brain, just like I guess in the human body, it's the most complicated part. And this whole thing reminds me of my own personal experience when I was working at one of my first EV charging companies. We were just getting started and trying to figure everything out. And we figured out the hardware supplier thing pretty quickly. We found a supplier overseas that looked good to us and we were happy with their quality. But then it was about finding the software provider. Some EV charging companies have both. They'll offer both the hardware and the software side. Some are just the hardware and some are just the software. And when I was meeting with these different software companies, the same option kept coming up, and it's something called white labeling. So how this works is, let's say you started an EV charging company and you needed a software to operate your chargers, then you could do something called white labeling another company's software, which essentially means you sort of buy the software from them or you rent it from them, but they take all their logos off and you can brand it and color it exactly the way you want to match your company that represents your branding. And I remember thinking, that's perfect. Great. Let's just white label someone else's software and put our own logo on it and brand it with our colors. So all of our clients just see our logo and our company name. But then they would tell me how much it costs. And this is when it all kind of froze us because we weren't expecting this. Most software companies have the monthly fee or the networking fee, and this ranges pretty greatly. It can be a couple $100s a month. And we weren't so concerned about this because this will be passed on to the client in most cases, or at least a portion of it. But what really freaked us out was something called the initiation fee. Some of the initiation fees are pretty shocking, especially if you're just an entrepreneur starting out and you're testing the concept, you don't have any charges in the ground yet, and they're asking you to make this big investment. And all the different software companies have a different initiation fee price, but some of the ones we heard were like 10 grand, 20 grand, and north from there. So it was a little bit jarring when we first heard that. And then the second barrier to entry was often they'll want you to have a certain number of chargers already in the market or already in the ground installed before they're willing to take you on as a client. So I guess the idea behind this is all these software companies, they want to make sure that whoever they're providing their software to is pretty legit and established. They don't want to have a bunch of companies that only have, let's say, two chargers on the market and they have to oversee all these little accounts. They want to have more larger accounts. So the last one we met with was a $20,000 initiation fee, and they needed us to already have 10 chargers in the ground. But then I remember thinking, well, how are we supposed to get 10 chargers in the ground if we don't have any software to operate them? That's kind of the cart before the horse situation. So this is called white labeling. It's definitely the better option because you have a lot more control and essentially the software is more or less yours. But I'll get into the pros and cons of this after. But first, I want to talk about what I figured out, which was almost like a middle ground in between the white labeling. And this is something called co-branding. So instead of white labeling the software and getting all the features and making it your own, you can sort of take a middle ground approach and do something called co-branding, which is almost half the features. You get to almost share the responsibilities and the benefits with the software company. So the basic way to explain co-branding is instead of with white labeling where you get to put your own branding on it, the thing is you have to share the branding with the software company. So often your logo will be there, but then beside it will be the software company's logo. So when anybody downloads your app or uses your chargers, they're going to see both labels, both logos. So they'll know that it's partly your company and I guess partly their company. But it's all give and take, right? So if you're just getting started and you want to have access to software, but you're not looking to make that huge investment, then co-branding looks like the way to go. Okay, let's break this down a little bit further of the pros and the cons of both white labeling and co-branding. With white labeling, it's definitely way better, but you will be paying for it. So what are the pros of this big investment? And the first one is you have complete control over the software. You'll be able to put your own logo on it. You'll be able to brand it with your colors. You have control over the customization of the app. So how it looks and how it feels for your users. For all anybody knows, it's completely your software. You designed it, everything, it's yours. And the second one is increased customer trust. They're only seeing your product and it's all yours. So your reputation will go through the roof. And the third one is a higher potential for profit. So it's your software, you paid for it, so you better get all the benefits from it. You'll get all the profit that goes into the software. You won't have to share it with anyone, which means higher return on investment in the long run. Okay, the downsides to white labeling, well, we addressed the first one and it's expensive. There's much higher costs. The second one is you'll have to have more responsibility. So now that you've paid for the software, it's your job to manage it. The EV charging software provider will help you, but you'll definitely have more on your plate, making sure everything runs smoothly. And the third one, again, is you still have that barrier to entry. So you'll still need to have 5 or 10 chargers in the ground before they'll consider taking you on as a client for white labeling. Okay, now pros and cons of co-branding. I like co-branding, so let's talk about the advantages here. And the first one is much lower initial costs. So you likely won't have to pay that huge initiation fee. If you do, it's probably going to be a sliver of what it would be for white labeling. The second one is faster to market. So this solves a lot of the concerns of an entrepreneur trying to just get started. They don't have all this capital to invest usually to pay for white labeling. So this allows you to hit the ground running and get started a lot sooner than later. And the software is already built, so you can focus on the many other aspects of the business like finding clients, and you'll also need an electrician that you can rely on to install all your chargers. So there's a lot going on, and this makes co-branding a pretty smooth operation to just get started with. And the third benefit is shared risks. So you're essentially partnering with the software company, so you're almost in this together. If something does arise or if there's a problem, then you can lean on them a little bit more for support. The downsides of co-branding. So the first one is co-branding. You're going to have 2 logos on the app. And every time a customer uses your chargers or uses their software, they're going to know that you're affiliated or supported or partnering with this EV charging company. And I just don't like the idea of them thinking, well, is this company or this company, or why am I paying this company if it's really just going to this company? It can get a little bit confusing. You also won't get the same level of customization for your app, so you'll kind of be stuck with the platform that they give you. The second one is having to share the revenue or sharing the money that goes into the software. I mean, this is to be expected because the software company is going to have to make their money back somehow because you didn't pay for that big initiation fee. And the revenue split might be not that appealing at first, but remember, this is to just get you started. This is just to get launched. And the third one is limited customization. So you won't have full control over the app. So you'll almost be stuck a little bit with the platform they give you. You won't be able to move things around or implement any creative ideas. But again, we'll just take what they give us because we're only going to be doing this for a limited time to get us off the ground. I would start with co-branding. I'd reach out to different software providers and see if they offer this option or a way to get around that initiation fee and those 10 chargers in the ground. Then once you're ready and you've kind of got a feel for the industry, you've established your brand a little bit in the market, and you've built enough capital to invest in the next step, then I'd level up to that white labeling. And often you can do it with the same company, right? It's almost like a starter pack, and then they level you up to the pro pack. And if you're wondering who to reach out to or where to get started, feel free to give me a shout and I can point you in the right direction. I've already spoken to a bunch of different software providers and they've given me some of their rough pricing and terms. So I could be almost like the first step to see which direction you go from there. And I always learn just as much from you as you do from me. So it's always awesome when people reach out. And if you're wondering who I am or why I care, my name's Trevor and I helped launch 2 successful EV charging startups. And now I make videos on how it works. And I'd love if you were to subscribe to the channel and keep following the journey. Thanks so much for checking in, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.